Hey guys, it's Obsolete here, back for another video. The Terraria Journey Zen update changed a whole lot about the game that we all know and love, and with all the new content that's been added, a lot has also changed about all the classes in the game. With that being said, it can be pretty overwhelming and difficult to find what class you should play in Terraria, and this video aims to help you fix that problem, and will help you decide by the end of the video on what class you should play. We're going to go over the pros and cons of each of the class, as well as what they typically use. Also, if you enjoy the content, make sure to hit that subscribe button, but only if you enjoy the content. Let's get into the first class, the Melee class. Melee is the class for those who don't mind getting up close and personal, and like to be on the front lines. Although some melee weapons have relatively short range, yo-yos, flails, and boomerangs are a nice way to go about avoiding being in the boss's face, as much compared to using early game swords, where you have to get very close to the boss. The short range is fixed around hard mode when you start to get more later game options such as the Terrablade, Flareon, and Zenith that let you have long range attacks while still having the most defense out of any class within the game, so not only can you tank, but you also deal great damage and have good range. You can basically face tank most bosses with very little worry of dying with the right armor and accessories, and depending on the difficulty. The Melee class also has the highest DPS endgame thanks to the Zenith. Moving on to the cons, it is a fairly boring and straightforward class until hard mode happens. And even after hitting hard mode, melee users are just a mana-less mage class, as they now have swords that fire numerous projectiles, which can still be a little boring. Lastly, if you choose to go for a higher defense build, you will sacrifice some of your damage potential. Next up we have the Ranger class. Rangers use fairly simple weapons ranging from bows and guns, but these weapons can have a variety of different uses depending on their ammo choice. Starting with the pros of the Ranger class, it is pretty powerful and straightforward. There's no extra gimmicks, you just simply fire away at your target. It also has one of the highest, or if not the highest, single target damage output of any class. Seriously though, this class does stupid damage to one target. It also has a fairly good weapon abundance throughout all stages of the game. The Ranger class can also hit 100% crit chance late game without even really having to try. Moving on to the cons, the weapons really don't change much. Upgrades simply mean more damage, a new effect, increased fire speed, or more shots in general. Ammo is also really important, and some of them really make a huge difference between the class being super insane versus being not that amazing. Some of the ammunition types require a good amount of grinding hassle in order to get. You're going to need to farm the Wall of Flesh quite a lot because you need Ranger emblems as they are part of a few key items late game. That's all for the Ranger, let's go ahead and move on to the Mage class. Mages have a pretty great variety of different weapons to use, so getting bored isn't really something that will typically happen, but they do have to worry about carefully managing their mana usage to stay at their best. Starting with the pros, the Mage class gets 2 potions dedicated to the Mage class that help with both damage and making your life easier with mana regeneration. The Mage class is by far the best class in terms of doing things like the pirate invasions, or the lunar events where there are a ton of enemies with its huge multi-target damage. With the right setup, you don't have to worry about mana nearly as much. It also is fairly flexible with high single target or multi-target damage depending on the situation and what weapon is used. Thanks to the Spectre armor set bonus, this is the only class that can function as a healer class for multiplayer. Moving on to the cons, damage can be kinda low before certain points of the game. Playing as a healer is a severe damage cut of 40%, so you either do low damage and mainly focus on healing, or you do full damage with no healing. It relies very heavily on the corruption world for the bandit star power, or making an artificial corruption for fishing it up from corruption crates, which is kind of a pain. It uses a lot of ingredients such as fallen stars and deathweeds to function at its absolute best, so be ready to build a herb farm to keep up with your mage needs. It also has super limited early game weapons. It relies very heavily on the Wanderless Sparking, gem staffs, or getting a lucky water bolt from the dungeon to be useful early game. Without a water bolt, it can be a very weak class early game. If the player is too trigger happy with their magic and doesn't have the right gear or mana regeneration, they will get the mana sickness debuff, which can cut your damage in half for a few seconds. So carefully managing your mana is really key to being useful. And last, and maybe least, we have Summoner. Have you ever wanted to command a bunch of pet minions or have sentries do all the work for you while you just exist and dodge and use a whip every now and then? The Summoner class is a really fun class to play, and I feel like you get a fair amount of options on different summons to use. It's also very flexible as you can use Summoner with basically any other class's weapons and won't miss out on any damage. The Dungeon Defenders crossover content gives stats for both Ranger and Summoner in one armor set for example. You have a portable mob farm in the form of your minions to bring wherever you go, so if you want enemies to leave you alone while you are building or mining, this class is great for that. The newly added whips and journeys make the class a bit more dynamic and give you something else to do besides just dodging. Moving on to the cons, the choices and accessories are quite minimal, as you basically are required to use certain ones if you want maximum damage or minion slots. Because certain minions have piercing, this can cause immunity frames, which prevents the enemy from taking damage from two sources at once, meaning if you multi-class with certain minions, your melee, ranged, and mage attacks won't hit as often. You will without a doubt spawn a wall of flesh or a queen bee at some point due to your minions. Lastly, although Journey's End gave a lot of love to Summoner, I still feel it lacks compared to being a main in other classes, but it's definitely in a better spot than it was before. And that wraps up my guide for choosing your class in Journey's End. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more content like this in the future, and comment your thoughts down below. Also join my Discord if you want to talk to me and get updates on future videos, link is in the description. See you guys next time.